Good afternoon. We continue today with our next item, a statement by Paul Wheelhouse on enhancing Scotland's digital connectivity. And the Minister will take questions at the end of the statement, so I would encourage members who wish to ask a question to press their request to speak buttons, and I call on the Minister.
Sir, this government is committed to transforming Scotland's digital connectivity and delivering world-class digital infrastructure. We have made significant progress already in this regard, despite telecommunications being an entirely reserved matter and all legal and regulatory powers sitting with UK ministers. Through the £400 million Digital Scotland Superfast Broadband, or DSSB programme set up by my colleague Fergus Ewing, we met our target of providing access to fibre broadband to 95% of premises across Scotland on time and on budget. In fact, we exceeded that target. Now, over 943,000 premises can access fibre broadband, which is around 103,000 more premises than was originally anticipated. We are also going where others would not invest. Before DSSB programme, there were no plans for commercial fibre broadband rollout in Orkney, Shetland or the Western Isles. Now, over 80% of premises in these areas have access. We have also seen huge increases in coverage in much of rural Scotland, from the borders to Argyll and Bute to the Highlands. And as the DSSB team has announced, take-up of broadband services on DSSB-funded infrastructure now sits at over 60%, when it was expected that take-up would only be around 20%. And that higher take-up further enhances investor confidence too. Through a contractual mechanism known as gain share, this is better than expected take-up has resulted in additional funds being available, ensuring build continues and there is no gap between the DSSB completing and our reaching 100% programme, or R100, beginning. Indeed, we have now a strong foundation upon which to reach 100%. Since 2014, superfast broadband access has increased by 35 percentage points in Scotland, from 59% to 94%, compared with a 21% increase for the UK. Presiding Officer, I am aware that belatedly the UK Government has woken up to its responsibilities in this area. As part of his leadership campaign last summer, Boris Johnson pledged to, and I quote, deliver full fibre to every home in the land by 2025, unquote. By the December UK election, that promise had been watered down to, and I quote, roll out gigabit broadband across the country by 2025, unquote. The UK Government has also been slow to invest in digital connectivity beyond its contribution to DSSB. Currently, it is contributing just £21 million of the £600 million this Government has committed to R100. The UK Government is providing a miserly 3.5%, with the balance of £579 million being fully funded by the Scottish Government. However, I expect Scotland to receive our fair share of the £5 billion announced by the UK Government for extending gigabit-capable connectivity, and I would welcome this Parliament's support to achieve this. This is why, over recent years, in light of large areas of rural Scotland continuing to experience very poor or non-existent broadband coverage and poor speeds, we could not wait for UK ministers to fulfil their responsibility to deliver broadband infrastructure for all. We have therefore forged our own ambitious digital agenda, committing to deliver access to superfast broadband to every home and business in the country through the R100 programme. Presiding Officer, I have kept Parliament informed of developments in the procurement process for R100 throughout the past year. Most recently, I advised Parliament that contracts covering South and Central Scotland areas have been signed, and as promised, I can provide more detail today on what those contracts cover. They will deliver £133 million of investment in the South Lot area and £83 million worth in the Central Lot area. In the South Lot, alongside commercial coverage, we will reach over 99% of the 26,000 eligible premises for R100, leaving in the region of just 200 premises in this area requiring to be connected by alternative means. In the Central Lot, of the eligible 55,000 premises, the contract we've signed with BT, alongside greater than anticipated commercial build, will reach at least 47,000, or almost 87% of them. The remainder will require to be connected by alternative means that I will outline shortly. Let me remind the Chamber that our commitment was to extend superfast access to all, providing access to speeds of 30 megabits per second or more. Presiding Officer, I am able to announce today that we will go significantly beyond this. I'm delighted to advise that as a result of our actions, all of the planned R100 build in the south of Scotland and the vast majority of the R100 build in central Scotland will use full fibre or fibre-to-premises technology. This will provide access to gigabit-capable speeds, in other words, not 30 megabits per second, but 1,000 megabits per second. This rollout of full fibre to most parts of southern and central Scotland is going significantly beyond our original commitment and will deliver a truly future-proof solution for Scotland ahead of the rest of the UK, even though the topography of these areas means they will be one of the most challenging broadband infrastructure builds anywhere in Europe. Of course, that complexity and the fact that the technology delivered will go beyond our original commitment means the civil works will take time. Engineers will reach around half of the target premises in both lots, approximately 23,000 in central and 12,000 in the south, by the end of 2021, with the majority of the build completed by the end of 2023. Now, Presiding Officer, I acknowledge that this on its own would be insufficient to enable super-fast access for all homes and businesses by the end of 2021 as promised. That is why, in the meantime, we will provide additional support to ensure that everyone can access super-fast broadband services in that timescale. As I've previously made clear to Parliament, there is always going to be a need for an aligned intervention to connect those premises that, for technical reasons, are beyond the reach of R100 contracts. I can advise today that the aligned intervention will be delivered through a voucher scheme funded by the Scottish Government. And I can further advise that anyone who will not be able to access super-fast broadband through the R100 programme by the end of 2021, even if R100 will ultimately reach them, will also be eligible for that voucher scheme. That voucher scheme will launch later this year and will provide grants to broadband customers in non-domestic and domestic premises, offering support to access a range of technologies and suppliers. Of course, Presiding Officer, I had hoped to be announcing details of all three contracts today. Unfortunately, as I advised before recess, the contract award for the North Lot, for which we have committed £384 million, is now subject to a legal challenge from GigaClear Limited. Until that challenge is heard and resolved, we are unable to award the contract as planned. I'm unable to comment on the litigation process itself, but I want to reassure members that we will do our utmost to ensure that the people in the north of Scotland access super-fast broadband through the R100 programme as soon as possible. However, in the meantime, customers in the North Lot area will also be able to access the voucher scheme when it launches later this year. Commercial investment also has an important part to play in enhancing Scotland's digital connectivity. Indeed, as members may be aware, Scottish ministers cannot, as a matter of law, invest in areas where commercial investment is already proposed. Commercial suppliers are already going further than originally anticipated, which has reduced the number of premises requiring public investment. BT is currently updating its own modelling to reflect these changes, and once this is completed and detailed survey work has been undertaken, I will be able to share specific details of the rollout plans down to premises level. The fibre we deliver through the R100 programme will also help improve Scotland's mobile connectivity, providing the backhaul needed to support the growth of 4G and 5G services, benefiting the development of Scotland's 5G centre and strategy. It will enable the movement of data across Scotland, supporting the growth of data-driven industries and technologies like digital health delivery and the Internet of Things, or IoT, where Scotland is already a leader. And it will support our ambition to establish Scotland as a green data hosting nation. The R100 fibre will link to new international fibre connections that will connect Scotland to the rest of the world, enable data to be moved efficiently across national boundaries, and open up a range of new economic opportunities for existing and emerging businesses. Crucially, enhanced digital connectivity will support Scotland to make a just transition in the new ways of working needed to address climate change. It will give people and businesses the tools and skills they need to harness the potential provided by digital technology. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, there is no doubt that rural Scotland has perennially had to play catch-up to the rest of the UK when it has come to digital connectivity and prior waves of telecommunications investment. The work to date, led by this government's approach, and again I pay tribute to Fergus Ewing in that, and undertaken through DSSB, has laid foundations on which R100 will build. This will ensure that, for the first time, Scotland is ahead of the curve, not just in the UK, but internationally. The R100 programme is a prime example of how the Scottish Government is using devolved economic development powers to mitigate and resolve a market failure that has arisen in what is, for now, a reserved policy area, telecommunications. This government will extend full fibre broadband across the length and breadth of rural Scotland. We will deliver a huge number of full fibre connections in what are amongst the most challenging locations anywhere in the UK and indeed Europe. And for most of those benefiting, we will greatly exceed our 30 megabits per second superfast commitment. R100 will help deliver social, economic and environmental benefits for all of Scotland, enabling innovation and the creation of highly skilled jobs, opening up remote working, social and leisure opportunities, delivering digital health and other new public services, and reducing travel, including the need to commute. Presiding Officer, Scotland's enhanced digital connectivity will support our transition to a net zero economy and boost population retention and attraction. And I am excited about what this connectivity will mean for everyone in those communities we reach through delivery of this hugely ambitious investment and commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. And the Minister will now take questions. The first from Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank the Minister for advance notice of his statement, albeit a disappointing one. I feel sorry for Mr Whitehouse coming here today, because sitting next to him is the Cabinet Secretary, Mr Ewing, who made all these promises for superfast broadband, and it's Mr Wheelhouse who has to come super fast to the chamber and break every single one of them. Now, I accept that, to be fair to the Scottish Government, they chose to make promises above and beyond their call of duty when it comes to digital connectivity. I've always accepted that, and it was an admirable ambition. The problem is, however, Presiding Officer, is that buried away on page 3 of the statement is an admission that that commitment simply will not be met. Reaching 100% of premises across all of Scotland by the end of 2021 is now the end of 2023, to say the least. Another big project, 2 years late. It all sounds so familiar, Presiding Officer. So let me ask some specific questions on what we've heard today. On the South and Central lot, what percentage coverage of the 100%, if we ever get there, will be directly and solely attributable to government intervention as opposed to commercial rollout? What technically are these alternative means that will fill in the gaps in fibre coverage, which the statement said they would talk about but didn't? And on the North lot, notwithstanding the difficult technical legal challenges that the Minister is facing, given that the South and Central lot will have to wait now until 2024 for coverage, how much longer beyond that does he think people in the North will have to wait for superfast broadband? And let me ask finally, given the choice between a guaranteed speed of 10 megabits per second right now by the UK Government, or wait at least 4 years for the Scottish Government's 1,000 megabits per second, what do you think people will choose?
Minister.
I should thank Jamie Green for this list of questions, because this is going to be fun responding to them. In terms of the guaranteed 10 megabits per second, UK Government, if he'd been paying attention to the statement, which he has had advanced sight of, I point out, in that statement, I make clear that a voucher scheme will be available for customers to give them a super fast service before the end of 2021 if they want one. So that is well ahead of the 10 megabits speed that the UK Government has specified, and well ahead of their 2025 commitment for gigabit-ready services. So on both counts, in timing and in quality of the offer we have provided to date in this statement, it is better than that of the UK Government. In terms of the work in the south of Scotland, as I made clear, just around 200 premises will be left in the whole of the south of Scotland, which doesn't just include Dumfries and Galloway and the Scottish borders, but goes beyond into Midlothian, parts of Midlothian, West Lothian, Clydesdale, parts of Ayrshire. Just 200 premises across that entire region, Mr Green, will be requiring additional support, and they will be eligible for our aligned intervention voucher scheme, which will deliver them, should they wish it, a service before the end of 2021, and will certainly deliver them an equivalent service as we can, gigabit, looking at trying to deliver up to gigabit speeds for them using vouchers to do so. So I would hope he will, when he reflects on the statement and reflects on today's debate, will see the positives in there. Get real. And as for burying something in page 3 of a statement given to Parliament on television, I would argue that it's not burying information, Mr Green. It's being honest about the impacts of litigation and the improved quality of the outcome we're going to deliver, which has an implication for timing. And I hope when he reflects on it, he'll see that we have already delivered 943,000 premises so far under DSSB, premises that could not be delivered commercially. We're only legally allowed to operate where there's no commercial plan. So by definition, those are entirely additional to commercial rollouts. And I hope when he has time, he reflects on his performance today.
Colin Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you to the Minister for advance sight of his statement. Presiding Officer, the Minister has confirmed today the worst-kept secret that the Government's R100 programme, irrespective of the promised speed 30 megabits or more, was never, ever going to be reached by the end of 2021. It was a manifesto commitment made in haste but reneged on painfully slowly. And today we still don't have a timetable for when it will ever be reached. But in his statement, the Minister has indicated that the vast majority of properties, at least in the south and central Scotland, within the current R100 programme, will be fibre to premises. But can the Minister explain what will happen to those properties not within R100? Will all those properties also become fibre to premises? And when I say all, I don't just mean those in cities that the commercial sector are targeting, or the new builds in our towns that are getting fibre to premises currently by the commercial sector. I mean the millions of homes, often in the smaller towns and areas such as those the Minister represents, that are not within R100 or the commercial sector's current plans for fibre to premises. If R100 now largely means fibre to premises, then surely that must bring in far more properties not covered by the commercial sector's plans or not covered by the current R100 programme.
Minister.
Well, in what Colin Smith's saying, there is a kernel of a genuine point he's raising, and I want to address that first before returning to something else he said. In terms of the point around the south of Scotland, just to reiterate the point, 100% of the R100 deployment in the South Scotland region will be full fibre. That's leaving just over 200 premises left in the whole of the south of Scotland that will need another intervention, and they will be eligible for our aligned intervention voucher scheme, which for technical reasons may not be able to get full fibre, but we're going to deliver certainly a minimum of superfast, which was the commitment, and go hopefully well beyond that with the solution that we'll fight for. That'll be a range of technology potentially deployed there, and it'll be up to a property-specific basis to look at what is the most appropriate technology. So I don't want to specify that all 200 will be one or another. It will be a mix probably, and we will do everything we can to make sure that those services are well beyond superfast speed if we can do so. So I hope that's a reassurance, and that covers all the towns, all the communities across the south of Scotland where there isn't already a commercial proposal. And as the member may know, commercial investment plans are afoot in the south of Scotland, and I would hope you'll recognise there have been significant announcements by a number of companies in that regard across the south of Scotland region that we both represent. So I hope that's welcome to him. But can I just challenge him on one point? He's kind of implying that we've just landed things on the Parliament today in terms of the voucher scheme and so forth. We've been talking certainly for the entire time I've been here, and I believe Mr Ewing before that, around needing aligned interventions to sit alongside the main R100 procurement. So we've always said that the R100 alone would not do the job entirely. We'll need commercial rollout, we'll need aligned interventions, and indeed I've set out today a process to deliver exactly that.
Maureen Watt, to be followed by John Finney.
Minister, do you agree that it's hugely disappointing for people in the north of Scotland that Gigaglear's actions have resulted in a delay to the award of the North Loft, which, with the amount of Scottish Government investment, promises to be truly transformational for the area? Does the Minister agree that it is completely unacceptable for a company who has never invested a penny in Scotland?
Ms Watt, can I just two things? First of all, your microphone's not up. Secondly, can I ask you, this is likely to be litigation. I'd be very careful about expressing comment about the outcome of that litigation. Yep,
okay. And had its contract to deliver a far smaller, far less complex broadband project in Devon and Somerset terminated due to the non-delivery and now the delay to the rollout of broadband in the north of Scotland simply because it didn't win that contract?
Well, I'll ask the Minister. I'm sure the Minister will be careful in his response.
I will be, Presiding Officer. Understandably, I appreciate the frustration that members are sharing with the news about the litigation. I'm sure Maureen Watt will appreciate I cannot comment on the legal challenge itself, and I will not do so, or indeed the past performance of Gigaclear. But I am obviously disappointed about the delay, and I think it's fair enough to comment on that, and the delay to the rollout of broadband for people living in the north of Scotland and working there. We certainly want to ensure that the public sector procurement processes are fair, Presiding Officer, transparent and accountable. It's my hope the situation can be resolved as soon as possible to ensure that one way or the other that we are able to be delivering services in the north of Scotland and that those customers are not unduly affected by these developments. In the meantime, though, just to stress, customers in the North Lot area, because I made the point in my statement, are eligible for the voucher schemes that I'm talking about today, and that will enable them to deliver grants to businesses and homeowners to allow them to access superfast broadband when it launches later this year, the voucher scheme. Currently considering what we can do proactively to ensure that customers in the north of Scotland know about that and what the scheme can offer to make sure that there's much visibility of it as possible.
John Finney, to be followed by Willie Coffey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I thank the Minister for early sight of the statement and the positive news contained therein. It also highlights, of course, the UK Government's shortcomings and the absolute brass neck of the Conservative members when it comes to their response. Can I say that the Scottish Government will enjoy Green Party support for calling for a fair share of the UK monies, if indeed they materialise? Minister, you will be aware that the Western Isles high-run Concom network is to close. You'll also be aware that in excess of 30% of households in each of the 3 island authorities don't have access to superfast broadband. So, Minister, will you commit to prioritising the rollout of superfast broadband to our island communities, please?
Minister.
I have to be slightly careful here. I hope the member will understand why, given the subject that's under litigation is the North area. But regardless of the outcome, I absolutely give him my assurance we are prioritising, as we've always tried to do, the outside-in approach and trying to work to ensure that our island communities get their indeed fair, or indeed in some cases justifiably more than their fair share of investment to try and bring around a genuine transformation in the digital connectivity in the islands. It's something that's been flagged up throughout the National Island Plan consultation process as being critical to protecting against depopulation and to allow economies in those areas to thrive. And I very much give him my assurance we will do that. And I very much welcome his support, I hope with other colleagues across the Chamber, constructively to work with UK Minister to get as much of that £5 billion that's promised to come to Scotland to deliver the best outcome we can for the communities he has referenced in our islands.
Willie Coffey, to be followed by Mike Rumbles.
Thank you. The Minister is right, I think, to highlight the role that commercial providers have to play in enhancing our digital connectivity. Could he outline what support the Scottish Government is offering to enable service providers to invest, and also some examples of what they're delivering locally alongside government investment in broadband and mobile connectivity?
Minister.
I certainly will, and I'm grateful to Willie Coffey for his long-standing interest in this issue and indeed raising this point today. We are using the devolved levers I alluded to in my statement to support telecoms operators in an area ultimately reserved to UK Government, so we have to be careful about that. But providing 10 years of non-domestic rates relief on newly laid and lit fibre is one intervention we've taken in the last year's budget, doubling the UK Government commitment of just 5 years. I know that has had an impact and a very positive feedback from the industry. They've welcomed that warmly. We've also taken action reforming the planning system and extending permitted development rights with the aim of encouraging new investment in Scotland's digital infrastructure. And as a result, we've seen extensive new commercial plans emerging from the likes of BT, Virgin Media, Vodafone and City Fibre. So in the last year alone, City Fibre announced £200 million investment to roll out their own gigabit fibre to the premises network in Scotland as part of their Gigabit Cities programme. Virgin Media confirmed further network expansion was underway through their £3 billion Project Lightning, increasing their fibre capacity and coverage footprint in Scotland to around 46%. And Openreach announced that 4 Scottish towns, including one very close to Mr Coffey's heart, Kilmarnock, Bathgate, Broxburn and Whitburn, would be prioritised as part of their Fibre First programme. And our approach has also had positive impact in our 100 programme itself, with commercial suppliers already going further than we had initially anticipated, reducing the number of premises requiring our own public investment. And for example, Sprouston and Walkerburn in the Borders will benefit from commercial rollout as well. Those are 2 communities we no longer have to cover with R100. So I hope that gives members a sense of the kind of impact that commercial investment is having on rollout of R100.
Mike Rumbles, to be followed by Emma Harper.
Well, forgive me, Presiding Officer, if I appear rather weary of yet another ministerial announcement delaying the current broadband commitment by the Scottish Government to have every home connected by next year. Now, how is this supposed to be good news when the Minister says that quite a few people in the south of Scotland that don't have a connection will now have to wait until the end of 2023, and we don't know how long my constituents in the north will have to wait. But exciting news, Presiding Officer. They'll be dancing in the villages and streets of Aberdeenshire. They're going to get a voucher that's going to be able to connect them to this service. Well, jolly for that. What they actually want to know, Presiding Officer, from the Minister is when they will all be connected. Please answer the question.
Minister.
It's a shame. I've been in the habit of having some positive discussions with Mike Rumbles lately, but unfortunately, the old Mike Rumbles has emerged today. In terms of the legal case, as we've discussed, I can't discuss the legal case itself, but clearly, Mr Rumbles would be aware it has had an impact on today's announcement. As I said in my statement, we'd have been intending to give clarity about all 3 contracts at this point, which I communicated to the committee. Unfortunately, we've got a legal challenge, which is perfectly legitimate of the business to do that. I'm not criticising that, but it is something that we have to live with. In his points around the delays, I've made clear in my statement today, and I hope he maybe hasn't had a chance to reflect on it beforehand, but we have committed to largely full fibre rollout in the north area, which his constituents will be served by. Of the 55,000 premises in the area we are able to target through R100, 87% are going to be getting a solution through main R100 procurement. Everyone else is entitled to a line intervention voucher scheme. All people that are affected by that can choose, should they do so, wish to do so, to have that service through a voucher by the end of 2021. So if they want to avoid going beyond 2021, they can avoid going beyond 2021. But if they're prepared to wait, they will always, those who are covered by the R100 themselves will all ultimately get the R100 delivery. Mr Rumbles, if you'd wait to let me answer, rather than fire more questions at me while I'm trying to answer his questions. The R100, it's down, this is the point Mr Rumbles has asked me, when will this happen? It's down to the individuals. If they want to have a service before the end of 2021, they can ask for it and get a voucher for that. But they will get a detailed plan, a rollout for R100 in the coming months. Once I have an online checker, they'll be able to see at a glance their own premises, which is an improvement on the DSSB system. They'll be able to see their own premises, whether they're getting the R100 procurement and when, getting a commercial deployment and ideally when that's happening, or they'll show them the eligibility for the aligned interventions. I hope Mr Rumbles has a more cheerful demeanour on his face when he's read the detail of what I've said today.
Thank you. Emma Harper, to be followed by Finlay Carson. Emma Harper.
I welcome the announcements made by the Minister today, particularly that R100 will deliver near 100% access to not just superfast broadband, but the gigabit-capable technology. That has the potential to provide a huge boost to the economy of the South Scotland, particularly in current not-spot areas, such as the busy train line between Stranraer and Bar Hill. It would be helpful to better understand what the lot areas cover, though. What is meant by South, Central and North lot areas? Can the Minister provide more information in that regard, please?
Minister.
Happily, Presiding Officer. To make the lots as attractive as possible in the telecoms market, the country was split into 3 separate regions, North, Central and South. While keeping in mind that R100 is tackling the most difficult to reach premises, each lot was structured so that it contained a mix of the most difficult to reach alongside more accessible properties to try and improve the attractiveness of the lots. The North lot broadly covers the Highlands and Islands, Angus, Aberdeen, Aberdeenshire and Dundee, extending as far south as Dunoon in the west coast and Creanlarich in Stirlingshire and Cooper Angus and Dundee in the east. The North lot also encompasses all of our inhabited islands, including those in North Ayrshire. The Central lot broadly covers central Scotland and Fife, extending as far south as Ayr on the west coast and Dunbar on the east coast. The South lot broadly covers the Scottish borders, Dumfries and Galloway, but as I alluded to earlier, also includes parts of West, Mid and East Lothian and parts of East and South Ayrshire and Clydesdale. I will provide, Presiding Officer, a more detailed breakdown of the areas covered by each lot and place that in Spice to assist members to inform their constituents about how they're affected about today's announcement.
Thank you. Finlay Carson, to be followed by Gillian Martin.
Thank you. Whilst not unexpected, this delay will be very disappointing to rural businesses in my constituency. As the Minister will agree, uncertainty is a major issue to businesses and could cost them thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I once again welcome the commitment to publish detailed plans of which premises will get superfast services and when. And I acknowledge that BT are currently doing modelling. But can the Minister tell us when it is likely he will publish information on specific individual businesses, letting them know when they're likely to be connected?
Minister.
That's a very fair point that Finn Carson raises. We have committed, I think at committee I made this point, but just to give a bit more clarity, we are going through the revision to the understanding of commercial rollouts. That is something that BT are now going through extensively through their own delivery plans that they'd agreed with us and trying to net off those areas that are now going to be covered by commercial rollouts. So we know the definitive list of properties that we will be dealing with under R100. We'd expect to do that between now and the spring, and by summer be able to publish an online checker with the detailed information that I've promised to Finn Carson and other members that will give a detail of exact down to premises level rather than postcode area, which was the DSB approach. Down to premises level. So individual constituents that you have approached you'll be able to help them, guide them to that information, and we're also looking at potential ways in which we can communicate through Parliament to provide more regular opportunities for you to ask on behalf of your constituents, and we can take you through that information.
Gillian Martin, to be followed by Luz MacDonald.
Officer, not every Aberdeenshire MSP is going to come away with curmudgeonly nonsense like Mike Rumbles, because most of us recognise if we'd waited for the UK government or commercial providers, the vast majority of Aberdeenshire wouldn't have a sniff of super fast broadband. That said, I am very disappointed about delays to the North contract because of GigaClear's action. But I welcome the Minister's commitment to ensure that people and businesses in my constituency and elsewhere in the North of Scotland will benefit from the voucher scheme. Can the Minister provide a little bit more detail on what the scheme will involve and how he will ensure that people in the North know about it and how to apply?
Minister.
Indeed, I thank Gillian Martin for positive remarks. And I do share her frustration, but she'll understand why I can't go into the detail of the implications for the legal action. The voucher scheme will be available, as I said earlier on, across all 3 lots. It will launch later this year and will provide grants to broadband customers in residential business premises to allow them to access a range of technologies and suppliers. Members will be aware of existing voucher schemes run by the UK Government. We are therefore working with UK ministers and officials to join up our respective funding pots and processes to deliver the most streamlined and effective solution to benefit people, businesses and communities. Ideally, if people go to one stop and get all the information they need and get all the funding they need, that would be ideally helpful. And we have had positive discussions with UK ministers and officials on that. Our approach will aim to make use of a proven application and payments platform, which is used for the existing UK-wide rural gigabit connectivity programme. And I'm currently considering what we could do when the scheme launches to ensure that people and businesses in the North Lot area know about what the scheme can offer. So we'll obviously engage with colleagues from the North to find out what your views are about how best we can engage through your offices as well to ensure that your constituents get the information needed if they approach you. But I'm most keen to get the contract for the North Lot concluded as soon as possible. And I want to assure Gillian Martin and indeed all the members in the North of Scotland area we will do all we can to make that happen while also obviously protecting the government's interest at the same time.
Thank you. Lewis MacDonald to be followed by Jenny Gilruth.
Thank you very much. Can the Minister confirm that the Government's intention is that full fibre to the premises will be delivered in R100 to R100 customers in the North of Scotland as elsewhere? And if so, will the voucher scheme enable customers to install full fibre to the premises connections if they wish to do so?
Yes, sir.
Certainly, in terms of the point Mr MacDonald raises, I am in difficult territory because if I comment in any degree on the content of technology, I might be falling foul of the legal action that's currently in place because there are potentially 2 different outcomes that may be obviously to determine. But in broad sense, I can say both bids have a lot of full fibre in them, if I can go as far as that without getting myself in trouble. And clearly, we are keen to maximise that, working with commercial partners in some parts of the North as well, who are delivering full fibre, as you know, in City of Aberdeen and other locations where that is prevalent. We will certainly the voucher scheme, in some cases, presumably it is possible that it may help deliver fibre to premises, but there will also be satellite and fixed wireless and other technologies. And as I said earlier on in response to Colin Smith, I don't want to be too specific about what the outcome would be because it may depend very much in one valley. Perhaps you may have a cocktail of different solutions depending on what is cost effective and will deliver the best service outcome for that household or business. So I don't want to be too prescriptive, but yes, it's certainly one of the suite of options, but I want to be honest about it as well. There's potentially, in some cases, the need for satellite and fixed wireless to be deployed.
Jenny Gilruth to be followed by Edward Mountain.
Presiding Officer, the Minister mentioned promoting commercial investment, something which I hope will result in addressing areas such as the Ministerial estate in my constituency. But can the Minister say more about what he understands of the UK Government's plans regarding digital infrastructure and how likely they are to meet their target of 2025?
Minister.
While we note the UK Government commitment to invest £5 billion in improving connectivity across the UK, there does appear to be a clear misunderstanding of how long it will take to carry out a procurement this size. As Mr Ewing and I both know, this is not an easy process. I certainly am aware that I think some colleagues in other parties are aware of this as well, especially as I understand there will be a period of discussion and negotiation this year to ensure state aid cover is in place for any new investment the UK Government put in place before their procurement can even commence. Add in time and resource required to physically deploy that infrastructure, and we believe the 2025 target looks to be hugely challenging in the same way as I'm sure colleagues here are saying they always thought ours would be challenging, and it proves to be the case. I would certainly caution the UK ministers may find that difficult too. But the announcement today does confirm that the R100 programme will deliver a high proportion of full fibre infrastructure, the point Lewis MacDonald raised, ensuring that Scotland will have a head start on the rest of the UK. That is perhaps a unique situation for Scotland to be in the history of telecoms infrastructure rollouts, and I think we should all seize the opportunity to grow the economy, and against the backdrop of historic underinvestment in this area. And I've certainly welcomed the views of 2 House of Commons committees that are calling on UK ministers to provide additional funding to Scotland and indeed other parts of the UK to tackle this issue, and indeed have suggested that Scotland, because of our topography, should be prioritised in that. So we believe any further funding in support of gigabit-capable connectivity offers a real opportunity for us to work with UK ministers. After all, what we do will help deliver their target and to make quick wins against its own targets, and we're keen to collaborate where we can do so on our 100.
Edward Mountain to be followed by Alistair Allen.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Sadly, another contract going to be delivered late, another broken promise. Now, Fergus Ewing offered to resign if R100 wasn't delivered by 2021, and it appears that it won't be delivered in the Highlands before 2026, 2027. Mr Ewing, if you're having trouble drafting it, I'll give you a hand. Minister, will the vouchers issued in the Highlands for superfast broadband ensure that no one there pays more than those in the Central Belt for the equivalent broadband connection?
Minister.
Well, there are issues that the latter part of Mr Mountain's question is a fair issue to ask. We clearly are obviously worried, as we've discussed at committee, I believe, if I recall correctly, the issue about the cost of delivering services. I would say take some encouragement from the fact that we've had an announcement today from DSSB that take-up has now reached 60%, so that is really encouraging. But I accept entirely there may be people who are priced out of using broadband services, and clearly we don't have the tools in this Parliament. That's not me making conscious, but it's just a fact. We don't have the tools in this Parliament to intervene in the telecoms market to make intervention there. We would have to see UK government take a step forward in that regard, and the idea of a social tariff has been floated, and that potentially one way the social tariff operates in the energy sector, for example. Could that approach be applied in the broadband sector as well to help customers who are faced with high costs of connecting? We want, I'm sure we all share the ambition to get everyone connected where we can do so. I would say in regards to his first point, I think he's been hugely unfair on Mr Ewing, not least, well, it's a very honourable thing, as Mr Ewing is always an honourable man, as we know, principled man, but he has moved on portfolio. I'm the person that's now responsible for delivering this. I take the blows on the chin for the delivery of this programme now, and we would both have faced, regardless of whether it's myself or Mr Ewing in place, or indeed anyone else, would have faced potentially the threat of legal challenge. It's unfortunate it's happened. We have to live with that, but I am confident we're going to deliver a highly successful programme and a great outcome for those customers who are going to benefit from our broadband investment. And I would hope, when the heat of this debate goes by, members will be grateful for the fact that they're going to see real progress in all of their constituencies.
And Alistair Allen.
As the Minister will be aware, the Connected Communities Service alluded to, which has provided broadband as a stopgap for many of my constituents in hard-to-reach places, will be ceasing in March, largely due to the rapidly decreasing numbers of people requiring it. This switch-off will nonetheless leave a number of my constituents with no access to broadband in the immediate term. What can be done just now to assist those customers of Connected Communities who face losing their digital connectivity in March?
Minister.
Well, it's an important point. Obviously, Mr Finney raised a similar point, I believe, in his contribution. I recognise, obviously, Dr Allen's considerable constituent interest in this. And in a situation where a broadband network such as this is failing and is going to collapse and it would impact on customers, we're clearly an opportunity to engage with Ofcom to see what we can do together, working with them to try and support those customers to ensure they have continuity of service. I'm happy to meet, certainly with Dr Allen and indeed Mr Finney, who both expressed an interest in this, to try and give them a surety about what we can do to help their constituents and make sure that no customer is left without a service for a long period. Clearly, we will have to work with the regulator, though we don't have a direct axe in that particular debate, but we'll do what we can to facilitate a good outcome for those customers.